Welcome back to the podcast. This is exciting. We just hit 60,000 downloads, and that is a big milestone. And I am so excited. So, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. I hope that you learn a ton of value on this podcast, that it makes you want to keep coming back for more. And if you have not taken the time to review the podcast yet, please take a few minutes to do that. It helps so much. I love seeing the responses when you can go and you can rate and review and even subscribe if you have not done so yet. You can do it on your podcast app. You just go in, you rate the show, and then if it allows you to write a review, I would love to hear from you and see what you're loving about the show. And it just makes me so happy. And then it also helps other people see the ratings and reviews as well. And it helps the podcast algorithms push it out to more people that are looking for podcasts like this. So I just appreciate you being here, and I wanted to say that right away. So, I want to ask you today if the thought of tackling finances stresses you out. Because if managing money feels daunting, you definitely are not alone. Before we started our budgeting journey several years ago, we were incredibly broke and thousands upon thousands in debt. We learned how to build a plan to actually manage our money and create habits that supported our spending habits and savings goals, or changed our spending habits and supported our savings goals, I should say. Once we did that, everything shifted. So yes, it did take some time to get out from under the debt, but it happened so much faster than we ever dreamed possible. And when we put habits and routines in place that change the way we think about money and how it affects us, we can start to get rid of that overwhelm when it comes to finances. And we need to use money to live in this world, but we shouldn't let it overtake our joy. So today, I want to share with you a few tips to help you organize your finances so you can save more and stress less.
Are you ready to stop the chaos, the stress, the overwhelm that's filling your life? I'm Renee Matt, and together you and I are going to build simple routines that are going to change your life. When you put these habits into practice, you're going to be able to organize your life in a way where you can be there for your family, pay off your debt, save money, your house can stay organized, you don't have to stress about what's for dinner, and you still get time for yourself. So without further ado, let's get started. Welcome to the Routine Advantage Podcast.
Before we go into the tips, I just wanted to share with you some things that I found after doing a quick Google search on statistics of money stress. And it said that 90% of people say that money has an impact on their stress levels. 65% feel like their financial difficulties pile up so much that they can't overcome them. 60% indicated feeling anxious when thinking about personal finances, while 50% felt stressed when discussing their finances. And 52% of respondents listed money as the thing that takes the biggest toll on their mental health. That is crazy. Like, not crazy that it's impossible to think that these are the statistics. It's like crazy that it's sad that this is how people are feeling, because we were definitely in this boat several years ago before we started our financial journey. I shared our like story about this in the beginning episodes. I believe it might have been episode 7, but I could be wrong about that. But it is in the beginning episodes. I shared the story that Tony and I went through of where we were at with our finances and how we got out of debt and everything. And I encourage you, if you have not taken the time to go through and build your base budget and learn how to create a budgeting routine, I strongly encourage you to do it, because it is truly life changing. Yes, it is hard work and it can be difficult to get through it and to process it. And in the beginning, it's a lot of information to deal with, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. And it is incredibly life changing. And let me grab those episodes because I do want you to be able to reference back to them. Okay, I paused and went back to look. So you can go to episode 7 to build your base budget. This is going to get you started. It's going to be your step by step to get you started on where to even put your income, your expenses, anything like that. I'll walk you through it. And then episode 16 will help you to use that base budget and learn how to track your expenses. And it does sound like a lot, and if you go step by step, it is so much easier, and you will not be sorry when you are months into this process. You will look back and be like, I cannot not do this because changes so much for you, and it does help to reduce that stress. But there are other ways that we can do that as well. And I want to share with you though those ways right now so that you have some alternatives to include if you are not already doing these things. So number one, the way to save more and stress less and get your finances organized so that you don't have the overwhelm. Number one is to automate your financial habits. Now, this is can look several different ways. One of the things that I would highly recommend is to set up direct deposit right to your savings account for specific amounts. So once we have money in our checking account, it's a lot easier to spend it and focus on other things. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh, I guess I don't have as much to put into savings this month. Maybe I'll do that on the next paycheck. And then the same thing happens the next time around. So if you have it direct deposit directly to savings and also your retirement accounts, have it direct deposit so you don't even see it. That will be a game changer if you don't already do this, so that what is coming into your checking account, that is what you're focused on managing. The stuff that is going directly into your savings account, you don't even need to check that. You don't even need to look at it. Let it go into your savings and don't think about that as spending money. That one is huge. The other thing you can do for automating is to set your bills up on auto pay. Now, this one is really important to know your due dates and make sure you know that there is money in the accounts because that could get you into big trouble if you have things, auto drafting and all of a sudden you're overdrafting because things are being pulled and there is not actually money in the account. So, we do want to make sure that you are prioritizing, reviewing your finances ahead of time, making sure that there is money in the account. But automating your bills can make things so much easier because then you don't have to worry so much about late fees if you forget about something, which hopefully, if you are setting up these habits that I'm talking about today, that you won't forget about bills. But if that is the case, then setting them up on autopay can be super helpful. The other thing to note here is that you will want to make sure you're checking on like subscriptions and things like your cable bill or internet bills, things like that, cell phone bills, because they can go up, and if you're set up on auto pay, you might not notice that. So just keep an eye out and have a good idea of how much is going to be coming out each time, because if something like kind of skyrockets and it's like, wait a second, rather than catching it months down the road that something increased a pretty substantial amount, you can catch it right away and give them a call, see what's happening, see if there's a way to get it back down to its original amount and all of those things. A lot of times if you just give them a call, they will bring it back down. So it's definitely worth asking if that is the case. So if you have something set up on autopay, just make sure you're checking those amounts and keeping tabs on that. The second thing you can do is to create habits to manage your spending. Now, one of the big things that help us, and we kind of got away from it for a while, and we just had our annual meeting, my husband and I did, and we kind of put our goals in place for 2025. And one of the big things that we talked about was trying to really focus back on waiting to make purchases. So this is one of our goals, and we have it written in our books to check in on this on our monthly date nights and everything. But basically, it is to put items in your cart and then don't check out, but wait until the next month to purchase it. Now, what this causes you to do is to reduce your impulse purchases, because we all know how convenient Amazon is. And when we can just look something up as we're thinking about it and check out, and then all of a sudden it arrives and it's like, oh yeah, what did I need this for? Or it arrives and you use it once or twice and then you never really think about it again. And all of a sudden, not only are you spending extra money, but your house is getting cluttered. And these are all things that we can avoid if we want to. So, one of the things that we really like doing is making sure that if we want to purchase something, unless we have, our clothing budget set aside where we have funds set aside for this, but even then we have to be really cautious because you can do a lot of impulse purchasing. But you can put it in the cart and then leave it in the cart and plan to budget for it the following month. Now, a lot of times what ends up happening is that you get to the following month and you review that cart and you realize that most of these things are no longer needed. Like, I don't have any interest in it anymore. We realized that we could have used something else and we didn't actually need it. And we can just remove those from the cart, and we saved so much money and clutter from taking up our house. So, this is definitely something that we want to implement again and get really good at, because when we were doing this consistently, it was so nice and we saved so much money. The other thing that you can do to create a habit to manage your spending is to check with your spouse before making any purchases, not in order to get permission. I know a lot of people are like, well, I don't need to run this by my spouse. Like, that's not what I'm saying. I think this is a joint effort. You are a team, but it is nice to kind of keep tabs on like your own spending by telling them what you are purchasing. So it's like, okay, I'm going to go to the grocery store. I need to spend about $80. If he's running to, the gas station, he needs to fill the propane tank for the grill, he needs to get a car wash, these things. Like, he can tell me that, and then I kind of have a good idea of how much money he's spending. He has a good idea of how much money I'm spending, and then we don't end up with situations where it's like all of a sudden I come home and I just spent 3 or $400, and then all of a sudden he spent 3 or $400, and we have now spent $1,000 or almost $1,000 in a period of 24 hours. Like, that doesn't happen when you're kind of keeping tabs and letting each other know what you're going to be spending money on, because you usually spend less when you have to tell somebody about it. So it's just a good, if it's healthy, it's a good way of keeping your spending in check. The third way you can do this is to create your grocery list before you go to the store. Like, impulse purchases are reduced a ton when you do this, but not only making your grocery list, but also plugging in like an estimated cost of that item next to your grocery list. So before you even go to the store, create that grocery list. If you think it's going to be like, $3 or $4, plug in $4. If I always round up if I'm not sure. And even if you have absolutely no idea, just throw in a guess, because it's going to be better than nothing. And basically, you're going to put an estimated cost next to each item. Once you're done with your list, add it all up and see if you're okay with that cost. If it's like, okay, that is way more than I wanted to spend on this grocery trip, then edit your list and see if you can utilize something that you already have in the house. If you can switch out a meal and replace it with something else, is there or are there changes that you can make to reduce the cost of this shopping trip? And then not only are you reducing the cost and you have a good idea of how much you're going to spend once you get there, but then when you are shopping, it keeps you more focused on getting only the items on your list, because you're being more cautious about how much you're spending and you don't want to go over your budget. So, this is a really good way of keeping your focus on the list and not buying a lot of extra things that you don't necessarily need. The other thing that you can do to create the habits to manage your spending is to remember and realize when you're in a spending mood. Now, my husband and I both have these, and they can get really strong. Sometimes it's like you're sitting on the couch and you're scrolling and you're just having a lazy night, and all of a sudden it's like, man, I am in a spending mood. Like, you're scrolling Amazon and it's all these fun trinkets and things to organize and like just random stuff. And there's really cute clothes, there's all these different things, and you just want to spend money. It doesn't even necessarily matter what it's on, you just want to, you know, put things in the cart and check out. Like, that is a very real thing that happens to us. So I know we can't be the only ones that this happens to. So, what I really like doing is having something in the back of your mind that when you're in a spending mood, to recognize it and decide to do something different. So, this is again where that, put it in the cart, wait a month to purchase comes in really handy. The other thing is that, when you are putting things in the cart and waiting, a lot of times these marketing, like promotions, they recognize that and then they send you an email or some sort of discount to try and get you to come back and purchase it. So a lot of times you end up getting some sort of, 10% off or 15% off to come back and make the purchase. But those discount codes are usually good for a while. So you can totally go back the next month and realize, if you really want it still, now you can also get it on discount. So that is a quick tip that I forgot to mention earlier. But when I'm in my spending moods, I really want to have a go to thing that will pull me out and like distract me from wanting to spend money? Am I going to go organize something? Am I going to, put my phone down and take a walk, do something else? Like, what are my go-to things that I can do to distract me when I'm in a spending mood instead of checking out of the cart? Because I need a go-to habit. One of the things too, if you are a like shopper for clothes and shoes and accessories and things like that, I've recently been listening to a podcast that's new to me. It's called Her Style Podcast. It's HER in all caps because I think it's her initials, but it's HER Style Podcast, and it is hosted by Heather Riggs. And one of the things that I love about it, it's like you might think like that would probably cause you to spend more money. But what I really love is that she focuses on intentional shopping and not just buying the deals and creating like this mood board on Pinterest. And again, normally I would do that and be like, oh, I need to buy all these things. But she really focuses on using what you have in your closet and trying to curate outfits based on what you have, and then having a really like focused list of what to buy to curate your own personal wardrobe. And I am not somebody that has a style. I never have, and I'm like, I would really like to know what my personal style is. Come to find out, I did her quiz and I'm like natural, classic, feminine. So I'm majority natural and then a little classic and a little feminine. So apparently that's what my personal style is. And I started pinning a bunch of things on Pinterest, and I definitely see where that comes into play because, like, all these things that I think are really cute and I would like to wear, I now look at them in a board on Pinterest and I'm like, oh, I see it. I definitely see it. And now I can like look at that and be really intentional about the pieces that I want to purchase later. And rather than just buying whatever looks cute, I can really think it through and wait because I want specific pieces and I want to make sure that I'm getting the best ones for the outfits that I want to create. So I think it's really cool. I'm kind of going off on a tangent. So if that doesn't interest you, you can hopefully skip through this part and I didn't waste too much of your time. But I think it's been super interesting. I've learned a lot from her. And if you want something like that, that interests you, then I definitely recommend her podcast. Number three, the third thing you can do is use encouragement to celebrate small wins in your financial journey. So this could be encouraging yourself. It could be getting encouragement from a friend. But when you are hitting a savings goal or you paid off a debt or you stayed within your budget on a category or your whole budget for the month, things like that, find ways to celebrate and be proud of yourself. Celebrate with your spouse. If you're doing this together, then do something together. Have a little dance party with your family and let your kids know and let them celebrate with you. If you want to do something a little more personal, sit down and polish your nails so you feel really good and tell a friend that is supporting you in this financial journey. Like things like that, you want to make sure you are celebrating the times when you are doing small wins because that is going to make it more exciting to continue on with these habits. And then number four is to set up a financial calendar and to build a routine that supports your financial goals. Now, this one I think is crucial because if you set up a plan and then you don't set up a plan to follow up with the plan, it's just going to disappear and you're going to forget all about it. And then months down the road, you're going to be like, oh, yeah, I had a plan. I didn't stick to it. And now it's too late. Or I guess I'll start next year. And then you have wasted so much time. So, one of the things that you can do with this is to schedule a time to review your budget at the end of the month for the month ahead. And this is where that episode 7 is going to come in super handy because that will help you create your base budget. But basically, at this meeting, you are looking, if you have already created your base budget, you're looking at that template to see what needs to be, tweaked a little bit for the month ahead. You're looking at your schedule and you're looking at what is coming up. What are you going to need money for that is not in a typical month? But you're looking at your expected income, and then you're going to review all of your bills, subscriptions, debt payments, everything like that that's coming up, and you can sort them by due date. And then you want to also review your additional expenses like your savings goals, your groceries, gas, date nights, church or charity donations, gifts, all those additional things that don't necessarily have a due date, but you need to spend money on those. So you started with your income, you went to your bills, subscriptions, debt payments, things like that, your any bills, things that you need to pay with a due date, and then you go to your additional expenses. Once you review all of these things and you subtract your expenses from your income, you want to make sure that it all fits within the amount that you're expecting to bring in as an income. Because if it's not, then you're already going over budget. So you need to make these tweaks before you go into the month because that is what is going to stress you out. If you are spending more than you are taking in, that is extremely stressful because you're going into debt every month if you're not paying attention to this. So we need to make sure that we are balancing and tweaking our budget before it begins so that we can make the changes. Do we need to cancel some subscriptions? Do we need to tweak our grocery budget and be a lot more cautious and conscientious of what we're buying when we go to the store? Do we need to up our intake of things from our own freezer and pantry and try and use what we have on hand rather than going out and buying everything? Do we need to make things homemade a little bit more often and not go out to eat because that can be really expensive? Where can we make shifts so that our expenses and our savings goals can fit within the income that we are bringing in? And then the other thing that you want to do is to schedule a weekly check in or what we call our budget chats. So these are our Friday budget chats because we do them on Fridays because that is our payday. And so it just works out really easy. But in this meeting, then you are basically just making sure that your budget is up to date for what you're planning to spend and how much you've spent so far, and then that your transactions are matching up with your bank statements and your balances are correct. So this is basically kind of like balancing your checkbook if we still used checkbooks, and maybe you do still, but a lot of us don't use checkbooks anymore. So this is our time to check our transactions when we've been tracking our expenses to make sure that everything is balancing and we're not missing something so that we are on track with everything. This is also where you could see if you have overspent anywhere throughout the month and where you need to pull it from if you have. So if you have been overspending this week in your, grocery budget, then do we need to adjust that in our gas budget to compensate for that? Because now we're going to have to drive less in order to account for the money that we spent in our grocery budget or vice versa. Things like that. Where do we need to make some edits if we overspent somewhere? Because this will also help you stay in budget if you have to pull it from something else, because otherwise that might feel a little more strapped. The other thing that you can review in these weekly meetings is to look at your bills and expenses for the next period of time. So this could be for the next month, this could be for, payday to payday, things like that. But you want to look at that and like for ours, we will look at this on a Friday and then we pay the bills. We were doing week to week just because we were getting paid every week, but we're doing some different savings goals. So we're kind of shifting things around a little bit. So we're actually going to be looking at it and we're going to be paying all of the bills for the next 2 weeks, putting everything into savings that we want to for that 2 week period. And we're going to be kind of putting a hold on some expenses that we need in that 2 week period. So if we know we need a couple $100s for groceries, then we're going to kind of pretend that is gone and kind of deduct it and see how much we're left with. If we need, other things going on in that 2 week period, then we're going to kind of just pretend that we have already spent it, put a hold on it, and reduce it and make sure that we are still on track and we're not going to be overspending by like adjusting for all of these different things. So it sounds like a lot, but once you get in the habit of doing it, it actually is very comforting because then you have a plan for all of your money, you know where it's going, you know that you can stay on task and on track. And as long as you stick to your plan, you won't have money stress. It is incredible. It's so good. So those are and I actually didn't even mention the sinking funds because that is something when you're putting money into savings, you want to do like your emergency fund and then your sinking funds. And I have an episode on that too. Let me take a look here quick. Okay, I just went back and looked. It's episode 32, 85, and 131. They all talk about sinking funds and they will help you tremendously if you have not gotten those set up yet. So, those are my tips on organizing your finances, doing things that will set you up for success so that you can organize and not be overwhelmed with your finances. So it's the goal is to be able to save more and stress less when it comes to our money. So a quick recap on that is to number 1, automate your financial habits. These are setting up direct deposit to your savings account, your retirement funds, set up bills on auto pay, and make sure you know the due dates. This will come in handy for your base budget later on. Number 2 is to create habits to manage your spending. This is putting items in the cart and waiting until the next month or even just the next week to make those purchases. Check with your spouse before making any purchases and let them know what you're planning on spending and create your grocery list, throw in an estimated cost next to each item, add it all up, see if you're okay with that, and edit as needed. And if you are in a spending mood, have a default on what you can do instead to help distract you from wanting to spend money. Number 3 is use encouragement to celebrate small wins in your financial journey. This is telling a friend, find ways to celebrate, be proud of yourself, do the dance party, polish your nails, do something that celebrates when you are hitting a savings goal, paying off a debt, or even just staying within your budget. And number 4 is to set up a financial calendar to build the routine that supports your financial goals. This is setting up a time. This is a monthly meeting basically is scheduling a time to review your budget at the end of each month for the month ahead. You're going to review your schedule. And then at this meeting, you're going to review your income, review all of your bills and subscriptions and debt payments, things like that that are coming up, review any additional expenses like your savings goals, groceries, gas, date nights, church, charity donations, gifts, all the things. And make sure it all fits within the amount that you are planning to bring in. And if it doesn't, make some edits now before you begin the month so you are prepared. And then the second thing to schedule outside of that monthly meeting is a weekly check in or a budget chat. This is when you meet with your spouse. If you're married, if you are not, then you can do this with yourself as well. But you're basically using this weekly check in to make sure your budget is up to date, your transactions are matching up, and balances are accurate. This is also where you can see if you have overspent anywhere in your budget and you can adjust things to see where you need to pull those extra funds from and how it will all balance out because we need to be making those changes ahead of time so that we don't bring ourselves into debt. And then you are also looking at all of your bills and expenses for the next period of time that you need, whether it's payday to payday or for the whole month or however that works for you for your finances. But you're looking at everything that's going to be due. You're going to pay all the bills or make sure you have the money set aside for your auto pay that are set up and hold the funds that you are using for those additional expenses so that you're not spending them. Make sure they're set aside for those specific funds. And those are my steps. I hope that these are super helpful for you. If it sounds like a lot and it's really overwhelming, just take one of them and focus on one, and you will be so much happier with just focusing on one and getting really good at that. And then once you have that created and it is set up as a consistent routine, then add in something else. And over time, when you are consistently working at this, it will get easier. I promise. It is really hard in the beginning, especially if finances are incredibly overwhelming, but there is hope. And I just encourage you to start small and get set up on a routine that you can be consistent with because when you are consistent, you will see those changes, even if it is just one tiny change at a time. If you make one tiny change today and then one tiny change tomorrow and one tiny change the next day and you keep going, you will see dramatic changes later on. So the key is to just stay consistent and not give up. So we're here for you. If you want to, share any questions or get some advice, you can come and join us in our Facebook community at facebook.com/groups/the routine advantage community. I'm happy to help you in there. You can also give any questions. You can say them on SpeakPipe where you can go to speakpipe.com/slash the routine advantage podcast, and you can actually record a question related to your budget routine or any of the routines that I talk about here on the podcast, or any questions that you have. I'm kind of an open book. So you can share any question you have on there, or you can email us, and the link for that is in the show notes. You can see all of our links in the show notes. And I will stop talking because I have taken enough of your time today, but I hope that was helpful, and I will catch you on the next episode. Take care.
Did you love that episode or learn something useful? If so, would you do me a huge favor? My goal is to grow this podcast and help as many women as I can break free from the overwhelm so they can truly enjoy their life. The best way for me to do this is for you to leave a 5-star written review on your podcast app and to share this episode with a friend or in your Instagram stories. I appreciate you being here. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you on the next episode. Take care.
If you have been dreaming of finding the perfect paper planner, look no further. My favorite paper planner is the Dream Planner by Horatio Printing. They have nice thick pages, so there is no bleed through. There are simple, clean lines, so you can keep it super minimal if that's your style, or you have the space to get really creative if you like doing decorations or washi tape or stickers and all the things. There is enough structure to keep you organized without it being overwhelming. And there are even pages to plan your annual goals and dream, and even do a check in each quarter. There are plenty of pages in the back, and this is where I like to track our marriage goals, my cycle, podcast progress throughout the year to keep this podcast going, my annual task list, and even habits that align with my goals. My favorite version is their black leather lay flat version, but you can also get other colors or even the spiral bound version if you are a spiral kind of girl. So I use my Google Calendar for my schedule, but if you have been listening to the podcast long, you know that I use my paper planner to plan out my upcoming week every Friday morning during my morning routine. This is a time that I can see my day stacks, I can plug in my priority tasks for the week, and update my habit trackers to see if I am on pace to reach my goals. It is one of my favorite times of the week, and I love my paper planner. It's the only one that I've been able to stay consistently using throughout the entire year, and I love it. So once they sell out, they are gone for good. So you're going to want to grab yours quickly before they are gone if you want one for 2025. You can go to horatioprinting.com. That's HORACIO printing.com and use code Renee15 for 15% off your entire order. That's RENAE15 to get 15% off. You are not going to be sorry, and you will have so much fun planning the year ahead.